welcome into another edition of the Going Deep Buffalo podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Massare, here with producer Pat to talk about plenty of topics around the 49ers. Got a great guest, Jessie, coming on here momentarily. Really great 49ers guest. Late night edition, pre-Thanksgiving edition of the Going Deep Buffalo show. So we started a little later. Going to bring you some, due to the West Coast nature, we're going to bring you in some really great 49ers action from some of the best out there. So we're going to break down the game, how they're feeling inside San Francisco, what they're playing for, their super long injury report, the weather, and so much more. As always, the show is brought to you by the Summit Center for the best autism care in Western New York, as well as Larson-Timko Funeral Home and Dave Dengler. So we appreciate our show sponsors here today. But Pat, how you feeling today? How you feeling after the bye?
I'm feeling pretty good, especially with the key players that we have potentially coming back after this week. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, we're still there. I mean, that's a pretty good place to start. We're starting the Bills end. We'll get into the 49ers here momentarily. But lots of good news on the injury report. Looks like you have, starting at the top, you have Amari Cooper back, still has the cast, but looks like he's practicing pretty much in full. You have Keon taking passes, look like he's on track. You have Spencer Brown saying he's ready to go. You have Carter and Grable coming back designated for return when the Bills want to activate them. I would assume sooner rather than later. You have Matt Milano, full prep participant. We'll see how much he plays. There's really no reason. There's an active roster spot available for Matt Milano, so there's really no reason to not play him. So he'll be good to go. How are you feeling about that injury report? I mean, that's drastically different than 3 weeks ago.
I'm feeling pretty good about it, especially with Josh Allen being off it as well, which some people are not talking about. Obviously, he's been dealing with that hand injury. But do you expect him to wear that glove moving forward?
I think I'm hearing it's a superstitious thing, so I wouldn't be shocked either way. But I think he will wear it. Yeah, I think he'll wear it. Will it be as padded? I don't know, but maybe it might be the eventual return of no glove. It is weather elements.
True.
So we'll see if that plays a role in the decision. With him being off the report, that would signify to me that maybe that is time to take off the glove, but it's the superstition thing. Maybe I don't know how superstitious Josh is. I'm not at all. Pat, what do you think? Would you take off the glove if you were him?
I would keep it on. I'm superstitious myself.
Okay.
The Bills are on a 6-game winning streak, and he's playing pretty well with it on. So I'll let it rock.
There you have it. So I do think that he may agree. So we'll see. I do anticipate it. I thought I heard from some people inside the team that's why he's wearing it, but we'll see if that continues to be true into a weather game, though. This will be his first real weather game of the season. Not usually a great idea to have a glove, especially running the ball won't affect him throwing much, but taking snaps with those elements as you get into the snow style game. We have a snow game coming. Like whether we have an inch or 8 inches will remains to be seen. What's your opinion there? Like, are you feeling good of a snow game? Are you like, that levels the playing field? What's your opinion overall with the strong nature of the Bills' trenches? Their obviously ability to run the ball. Like, what's your opinion on if the snow does come?
Well, if this was 2 years ago, I'd be a little bit more worried about it being a snow game. But with the Bills' ability to run the football this year, I'm pretty confident in it. I think that does benefit San Francisco as well. Especially, I know we'll get into it later, but if they can run the ball effectively as well, it could be balanced for both teams. It can help them out and us.
Yeah, and all it takes, as the magic number is still 2. So the Bills still to clinch on Sunday Night Football. They will need a Dolphins loss to the Green Bay Packers. Pat, is that coming tomorrow night, or are we going to have to wait till next week?
I'm going to say it's coming, especially with it being in Wisconsin. I know right now it is cold outside.
You're there?
Yep. Yes. I believe it's at 25 degrees outside. And we all know how the Miami Dolphins cannot play in cold weather, especially Tua. So I think it's going to come.
I do too. I mean, they're jazzed up in Green Bay. They don't play well on the road. They don't play well at the end of the season. Tua always has his mid-season burst, which he just started to have.
Yep.
Comes crashing down every single season when the weather comes. Yep. I still think has he won a game under 40 degrees? I don't think so. At most it's 1, but I don't believe he has. I don't think he's won a game in those elements. So we'll see if that changes. I think Green Bay's just all around a better team. But we'll see. Now, Miami's been playing good. They've had a cupcake schedule, but they go into it. It's still a pretty easy finish. They have 2 Jets games. So it's not a hard completion for the Miami Dolphins. So this is a big game for them. So we'll see if the Bills are able to clinch the AFC East on Sunday Night Football, or if they're going to have to wait on the road in the Rams or Detroit, or, heaven forbid, the Jets game. It's a little far away, but that would mean multiple losses if that was the case. So we're not looking for that one. But do you think now, as you look forward to Sunday and you see this injury report, Dalton Kincaid didn't practice. He's the only one really. The Bills holding him out? Are they going to get him back? I mean, it's a tricky situation with the stretch run coming. How much does McDermott push it? I think they push it until they clinch the East. They got to do that.
I agree.
Then you can kind of play based on how KC looking,
right?
How Houston looking. You're going to be looking around based on your opponents, like the weather. So next week, I would anticipate, being in LA should be okay. Detroit in the Dome. The Jets game gets a little squirrely with, how that's going to feel. But the Bills are going to have a long time playing for the seed.
They are.
And something a little more serious. That's going to be a challenge. But I do believe the Bills will push it until they clinch it. Do you think that the weather is going to affect their decisions, or are you feeling like they have a plan already?
I believe they already have a plan already. And even if it's an inch or 2 inch, I don't know how much snow they're supposed to get, but I don't think that would really change their game plan moving forward. So I do expect to see Dalton Kincaid play, like you said, until the Bills do clinch the AFC East, which is hopefully this Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, this Sunday night is a likely scenario. Next Sunday is also a very likely scenario. If for some reason something goes haywire, it would be next week on the road, of course. But I mean, the fans will deserve to see an AFC East divisional crown. But whatever, if it happens to be the Rams game, it is what it is. And we can't control the Dolphins game at all. Right. Your opinion on, if you look through what this game's going to look like, the 49ers are talking about, I mean, how much does Purdy play? That's a big question right now. How hurt is he? Some people are talking about this as a contract situation to where he's going to run out and potentially in snow and only ruin his value. They keep losing. That doesn't help his case. Playing hurt doesn't help his case. It's a tough decision here by Brock Purdy to determine what the right course of action is going on the road again. What's your quick, before we get some 49ers talking, do you think Brock Purdy plays?
I don't know, because I know there was some reports that came out saying he only threw one pass today in practice. That's not a good sign to start the practice week. That's not a good sign. It was a I believe it was a check pass.
It was a screen pass
to Jordan Mason. Me personally, I don't think he's going to play, but at the same time, they are fighting for their playoff lives right now. They are, I believe, fourth in their division by a half game.
Yeah, but a tiebreaker. Yeah.
But I am going to expect Brock Purdy to play, just because this is a very important game to them, as it is for us too. But they are on the outside looking in right now.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, he's got to go on the road. The thing about the road, the cold environment, needing to keep that warm and pain-free, I don't know. I think that based on the results of this game, you may see him, if he's back next week, or shut down in total. I don't exactly know. It's going to be tough. The rule of thumb is road games, you lose a day of rehab. So there's a lot in flying that far. True. You're not talking about, you're not talking about going to Cleveland. You're talking about a really long flight where inflammation happens. There's a couple of signs that tell me that it would be next week at best. Especially taking one rep on a Wednesday, even if you can play, that's not a good sign. Dual MRIs because you don't know what's going on, or you don't believe the first one. That's not a good, regardless. That's not a good sign. That's strange right now inside San Francisco. And if Brandon Allen plays, I mean, he's playing with a broken left hand, fingers too, like in the snow. Like, I don't know what that. I mean, George Kittle's a great tight end, but ultimately, I don't know.
And with the way our corners are playing, Deebo Samuel's kind of out of the equation with himself.
Yeah. I mean, Fred Warner news of him playing with a broken ankle, not being on the practice or not on the injury report. That's bizarre. Like one thing to play through it. Like that apparently was, healing into some of his coverage issues that I've seen. Still one of the best linebackers, that plays the sport, but to his standards, there's definitely going to be some things that show up on tape. So are you like, ultimately, this is going to be a challenging game for the 49ers to really navigate.
It is. It's going to be, especially with all their injuries, like we already spoke on with Brock Purdy, Brandon Allen, and especially with the way our defense is playing in general. How is Deebo Samuel going to get separation against a guy like Christian Bedford or Rasul Douglas, or if they want to line him in the slot against Taron Johnson? Our defense is playing very good.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, look inside the numbers. So if we go like check out some numbers, and I'm obviously going to lean on the analytics rather than box score stuff. So I'm not even sure where the box score differences lie with these teams, because it's overall there's no nuance, there's no variation, there's no story to be told when you're looking at just a straight up box score. So that doesn't really do too much for me when you're looking at it from that perspective. So if we pull up I'm going to pull up DVOA to give us a breakdown of kind of what's happened so far in the season. They're still saying 9th DVOA, so they're still playing good football according to the analytics. The Bills are 3rd. Last week, San Francisco went into the game 6th, so they're starting to finally fall a little bit. Their defense is playing 6th in the league, and their offense is playing 8th. Conversely, the Bills are 7th on defense and 4th on offense. So, like, they're getting good analytical football. I mean, one place that's interestingly they're last in the league is special teams. So that's an interesting situation. That's something you don't see. That's got to get cleaned up, and the weather elements come in here.
Yes, especially in the weather. That's pretty interesting.
That's weird. I think something that they're going to look at is their future schedule has a ranking of top 5. So they have a top 5 finish of the year. So it's going to be really tough to finish this thing out. Bills have a 26 rated schedule based on DVOA.
Oh.
So, that Lions game looms in there. But other than that, I mean, DVOA is basically saying it's not that hard of a finish for the Bills. Whereas the 49ers have a top 5 finish. And if you kind of dive a little bit deeper, let's actually look at their playoff odds. That's something that's interestingly driving maybe some of their injury decisions based on where they fear they could finish with that top 5 schedule. So if you look through it, I'm going to go to the 49ers and their likelihood to make the playoffs based on their schedule and how they're playing. Right now we have an 11% chance to make the playoffs. So it's going to be a challenge with an 11% number with that schedule. Mean wins 8. So they're even their metrics are saying that they're going to play an 8 and at best a 9 win season. So they're on the brink. We shall say. No Nick Bosa, most likely. I mean, Pat, you're talking about a really challenging situation.
What about Trent Williams? Is he going to play? Because I know
he was apparently, according to people inside their building, was rolling around on a scooter.
That's not a good sign.
No. I mean, it doesn't mean anything for an all-pro. But I would assume that that's not great to be rolling around on a scooter. Even if he plays, how effective could you be being on a scooter on Wednesday? I mean, that's not a good sign. So then now you're putting Brock Purdy in, missing offensive lineman, your best player. You're missing your really rookie guard that may or may not play, was limited today. You're missing your starting offensive line. Does Brock Purdy want to play in? I don't know. Like this, there's a lot of questions here, not a lot of answers. That's an underrated fact, Pat. The offensive line. You talked about a couple players that may be missing, but is he super eager to go play in that behind that offensive line that could let him down?
Depends on what kind of competitor he is. He does see that they are on the outside looking in at the playoffs. Should he play? Yes, but like you said, with the weather, with the offensive line, does he want to go out there and further risk an injury potentially? Because that is with his shoulder. What happens if he gets sacked the wrong way, especially in the cold? It's gonna be hard.
Right. It's gonna be definitely a difficult challenge. We'll get some more insights in San Francisco here in a moment. We're really looking forward to chopping it up with our guest, who will be able to break down more nuance, more situations inside the 49ers and the 49ers situation. We really appreciate everybody tuning in to this pre-Thanksgiving edition, this Wednesday edition. As always, we're going at you about an hour later than usual. So we wanted to bring you in some great 49ers content. We didn't just want to talk Bills. We had a bye week. You guys, made your AFC power rankings last week.
Yes.
So we really wanted to talk San Francisco 49ers. What's going on? We don't play them in over amount. It's not like we're playing the Dolphins here. Most people are in tune with a lot of the division moves. We don't play the 49ers every day. What's going on with that team, their injury report, that division that was supposed to be so good? A couple questions that we'll have. Is there what's pressing for you, Pat? Like, what's on the top of your mind as you think of the 49ers, or you think of their losing record?
When I think about the 49ers, I just think about Christian McCaffrey, really. And Brandon Ayuk, if he's playing, but he's not. He unfortunately did have that, I believe, ACL injury, or is it an MCL injury? ACL.
Yeah, he's done for a while.
Yeah, but overall, I look at them, they have a great offensive scheme over there, and they're just they were just in the Super Bowl too.
Yep.
So I look at them still as a very good team.
Yeah.
I know their record's they're not playing like how they were last year, but they still are the defending NFC champions.
Yeah, I mean, look, Brock Purdy can be 10 to 14 on your rankings list, depending on if you like him or you average on him, 8 to 14, depending on who you are. So he's usually right there. You have obviously Trent Williams, a top 5 tackle. You have George Kittle, a top 3 tight end. You still have Debo based on, not playing his all world, but still receiver 1 by most metrics. You have a couple of good looking players. I mean, you have Dominic Puni, their guard, top 15 guard in the league so far based on his win rates. He may or may not go this weekend. And they have a talented offense across the board. And it's been interesting to see some of the numbers aren't lining up to that. Obviously Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in the league, playing with a broken ankle. Nick Bosa, one of the best edge defenders in the league. Malik Mustafa's playing good. I know a lot of people wanted Malik Mustafa in the draft. That's going to be interesting. Renardo Green has had a really good season at corner. So Lenore, he's hurt. He didn't practice today. He's a good defensive back for their scheme. I mean, we're going to have to see how all of this plays out and more. So it's been a challenge. The metrics are weird because they're good. The record's not, and they definitely have some lapses. But I think the injury bug caught up to them. Is that your best guess, Pat, at what's going on before we really dive in?
Yes, I would say that the injury bug is what's kind of hindering them. It's kind of what's holding them back. Kind of like what happened to us the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of a Bills injury situation to where, at this time of year, sometimes the Bills are in a challenge. They've been healthy for the most part in stretches. They got that injury bug at the end of last year. That was brutal. You thought you were going to go in a good situation, ripping off another 5 or 6 straight wins. And then you go into the playoffs, getting hurt in that New England game or that Miami game, and then into the playoff game against Pittsburgh, where you lose Rapp, you lose Bernard. I mean, it's just too much.
Douglas too.
Yeah, it's just too much. Gabe Davis couldn't suit up. There just wasn't much there for the Bills in the playoffs. And look, it matters when you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, as we saw last week, and that the Bills are able to do when their defense at least was at full strength.
Yes.
It matters. Like, you're not rolling out AJ Klein. You're not rolling out, Dodson, who of course PFF loves for whatever reason, but it's been cut already, and now he's on the Dolphins. So a hurt Rasul Douglas, a cooked Dane Jackson,
no Christian Benford either. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we know how that feels to win, and I think that they've, the 49ers had to hit critical mass of where they're at in terms of their injury content. Like, it's just too much. The Bills have been there. They've been there late. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's one that they need to do a little bit better with. But it's easy to sit here and say like they shouldn't be 5-6. But the injuries do. You're talking about premier players. You could argue that their injuries are as bad as anybody's in the league.
Right.
Here you go. Their key players: Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, Greenlaw. Greenlaw's been out. Correct. He's just practicing now. We'll see when he's being able to go. Williams, Bosa, now Purdy. Otherwise, one of the best rosters in the NFL when healthy. None of them are playing. So ultimately, beside Kittle, who's playing now, he's missed a game or two here and there. Samuel misses a game or two every season. It's just tough to overcome that for any team, any roster. It's a major challenge, as many Bills fans know and like to use as their reason for the Mahomes and overcoming Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge for any roster. But when you really look through the 49ers, we can get into some more nuance and details in a moment. As like we said, only play them usually speaking, every 4 years. Sometimes you hit the crossover NFC AFC game now if you finish in the same rank. But other than that, like you don't see each other too much. And the 49ers are going to feel, I guess, a late season AFC North game. When you're talking about the Bills have the same weather as the Cleveland Browns. You can argue like here and there, the Bills get a lot of the notoriety from the weather. But really the Bills only play one weather game a year.
True.
And it's last year it happened to be in the wild card round.
Yep.
You're talking about the year prior, you're moving the Cleveland game because literally no one could leave their house. So there's definitely some situations, but we got to talk about the 49ers a little bit more in depth. Bills coming off of a bye. We really appreciate everybody tuning in, all of our live viewers for this late night edition. Summit Center, Larson-Timko Funeral Home. Thank you so much for being a part of the Going Deep Buffalo show. But we're gonna welcome our show guest for the night. We're gonna bring in Jessie, one of the best 49ers YouTubers in my opinion in the land. Just was catching some of your show just previously. You seem to have a pretty good San Francisco roundtable going. I caught some of the topics. That was pretty neat to get caught up on some of the things going on live there. But Jessie, I always like to ask our guests, recap for us the first, in your case, 11 games. What's happening? Most people, you still look at metrics and you still see DVOAs, you still see top 10s and a lot of different things. Recap what's going on to get you to 5-6. And is it just an injury issue? And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kevin. I know that we like a lot of back and forth to make this happen. So thank you for adjusting your schedule. Definitely love talking all 49ers matchups, and especially with Buffalo. One thing about me that anybody who watches me knows, I'm a big Josh Allen fan. He's my favorite player that doesn't play for the 49ers. So I've always supported Josh. So playing against Josh in prime time, I think, is a treat. I wish it was going to be a better game. It's not going to be great, but either way, very excited to watch the matchup on Sunday. As far as the first 11 games go with the with the San Francisco 49ers, yeah, they've had injuries, but that's not the reason. Really, I'm going to go all the way back to when they lost the Super Bowl. To me, at that moment, it was very clear that they were at a pivot point. And it's really hard to move on from a team that was this close to winning a Super Bowl. They went into overtime with the Kansas City Chiefs. But when you really look at it, you take a step back and you look at the way this team was constructed, and you look at Kansas City, who really had no business winning the Super Bowl last year. The NFL was the most down it's been in a long time. Quarterback play, I think, was the most down it's been in a long time. It was clear that the league was going to go on an uptick. And the 49ers weren't going to have enough to match everybody else taking this big leap forward because they have an aging roster. They are expensive. They've got to make a decision on if they want to pay their quarterback. Do they believe he's a franchise guy? And so for me, it was pretty clear they should probably sell early, get rid of guys maybe a year early versus a year late. And that's not the route that they took. I was at training camp. Vibes were completely off. Last year when I was at training camp, it was clear this team was a Super Bowl contending team. They felt it. The crowd felt it. From day one, you knew what was up with the San Francisco 49ers. And I would say this year was the exact same thing, except for in the opposite direction. Ayuk wasn't there. Trent Williams wasn't there. CMC got hurt very early on. Everything was just down. You could feel something was off. And then when they started 3-4, losing yet again to the Kansas City Chiefs, once again, I made the battle cry. Please sell before the trade deadline. They had one more game against Dallas. Everybody knew they would beat Dallas because they always beat Dallas. And then you had the bye week, and that's when the trade deadline was going to happen. They enter that at 5-5. They aren't buyers or sellers, unfortunately, which I think is the worst thing that you could have done, which is not choosing anything to do. And here they are with the same problems. They get a lot of penalties at the worst times. They miss tackles. They can't score in the red zone. They can't stop anybody in the red zone. Everything that can go wrong it's the second worst special teams in the NFL. Yes, they get a lot of yards. Yes, they still put up a decent amount of points. But when you actually watch the 49ers, every single inch seems like they're fighting for it. It's a really, really tough season to watch being a 49er fan.
Now, when you look through like their games and their results, I mean, you still have Brock Purdy, who, is loved by advanced metrics. Like his EPA is always good. It's got to be a tough situation for Brock, who now has had multiple MRIs. He's going into cold weather environments, Green Bay, Buffalo, bad cold and now colder, not maybe worse elements, I should say. And one of these Buffalo games every year, we were just talking about, it turns into a disaster. And how wanting a contract, playing hurt, needing 2 MRIs, maybe I was listening to Grant talk. He doesn't know how hurt he is, or if it's like a, I don't know situation of, I'm trying to prove I'm hurt, but you guys don't believe me, or the reverse. They found something, I don't know. It seems strange going through one pass, a screen pass at practice today. Like, is he feeling like he's going to go into Buffalo, upset the Bills, like get it on there for himself to, escalate his contract numbers? Like, doesn't that only seem like, at least from an outsider's perspective, even if you're playing, doesn't really matter, the Chiefs again, like from an outsider's perspective, it would look like that would only hurt his value. So is that part of this? Like, it seems like there's just been some weird San Francisco contract negotiations from Ayuk, with like the vibes you were talking about to start till today, like, or is it a situation where he legitimately can barely throw a football?
No, it's pretty legitimate. I got a text last Thursday while they were at practice that he was leaving the field and getting an MRI. And when Shanahan came out the next day, he said that he got an MRI on Monday, didn't mention anything about a Thursday MRI. And it wasn't until Sunday that Jay Glazer came out and confirmed he was getting, or he had an MRI on Thursday. So that backed up what I had heard on Thursday. He can't even lift his arm over his head right now.
Sheesh.
They don't know. They don't know what it is, though. The MRI isn't really showing anything. I mean, and I don't know that it's necessarily serious, a sprained AC joint, or, there's a lot of things that can cause that, a labrum issue, anything. And it doesn't have to be major, but it can be enough for you to be in pain for right now, 10 days removed or so from the original injury happening. So, yeah, I think it's very real, but he's up against it. This is tough, because imagine being Brock Purdy, and 2 weeks ago, it was a foregone conclusion that you were going to get this massive contract, at least in everybody's mind, outside the organization, talking to the organization, what have you. That's the way that it seemed. And I'm sure he thought that as well. And now, a couple weeks later, you've got an injury. That injury, for the second time in 3 seasons, is keeping you out in the most critical time for the team. So if you're the 49ers, are you willing to throw that kind of money at a player that 2 out of the 3 seasons had injuries to his throwing arm that kept him from playing when you needed him most? I mean, that's a
the
tough
Dolphins
proposition. Yeah, well, the Dolphins, listen, the Dolphins, I don't know what's going on over there. That was a bad decision too. But you got to take that into account. And you've also got to take into account that, really, as far as games played, he's essentially had just over 2 actual seasons of games played. And sure, if you were to split this up between his rookie season that bled up until the Ravens game in season number 2, that was one really good season of football. But since then, the second season of football has been average starting quarterback play, I should say. So that alone is enough to give me pause. And now you're adding injury on top of it. I don't know. There's a lot of different routes the 49ers could take. To me, it seems like every game he misses, he's making it harder for the 49ers to guarantee paying him anything. But if he goes out and plays in Buffalo and he's compromised in a snow game, nonetheless, this is a man who's shown in 3 rain games he struggles.
I've heard.
So now you're going to add elements on top of a hurt arm. That's not going to be a good showing, most likely, against a very hungry, good, flying to the football style defense in the Buffalo Bills that creates a lot of turnovers against everybody. So he's really kind of caught between a rock and a hard space here. I don't know what the best option for him is. If you're healthy, I say play, obviously. If you're not, then I say don't. But either way, Brock Purdy's really, really up against it, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is. And that's a challenging situation for him all the way around. I mean, I was just thinking about it from your perspective. I don't know how you manage that. And then I've always heard, at least from the Bills medical's perspective, I know some people inside the Bills and plenty of injury experts who say like the travel, especially West Coast for us or East Coast for you, the inflammation flying, the long flight, losing a day of rehab on a guy that threw one pass today. I mean, you got to find maybe another game for the return, but then the elements is kind of the kicker of the whole situation. If it was a beautiful sunny day, I don't even know that he could still be ready traveling to the East Coast. But I mean, that's the lack of ability to rehab is humongous for NFL medical teams. So like I ask all the time, I'm like, he's so close to playing, like, you know, use Dalton Kincaid on the Bills roster. The Bills are very healthy. So they're in a kind of a little different situation, knock on wood, from the 49ers right now. They've been hurt. They actually had the injury bug early this season. We're missing multiple players. The roster they played out against the Ravens and Texans were shell rosters at times. You know, you guys know how that feels. No one's going to feel bad for you. But I asked, I'm like, why wouldn't Spencer Brown be ready to go in the biggest game of the year, you know, regular season game of the year against the Chiefs, in a must-have it protecting Josh Allen? He just didn't have an extra day to rehab that they were looking for, that ankle in his case. And it does matter that they can't receive all the days that they need to rehab. So, like, I mean, Purdy is really up against it. What is your best opinion on Brock? Does Brock Purdy play? And if not, when do you expect to see him return, if even soon?
Yeah, my opinion after him not playing in Green Bay, I said he either plays versus Buffalo or he's done for the season. Okay. And I know it's two extremes, right? Like, but to me, it's like, well, you lose to Buffalo, especially if Seattle beats the Jets. You're 2 games back in the division with 5 left. Why play? What are you risking? And then are you even technically going to be ready to play against the Bears the following week? Does it take 3 more weeks before you're ready? And then at that point, you're definitely out of it. To me, he either plays this week or he's done for the season. We'll see either way. But this is the interesting thing. The 49ers are horrible at disclosing injuries as well. They tell you only what they have to tell you. I'll give you another example. Trent Williams. Trent Williams missed last game due to an ankle injury. Kyle Shanahan said in the postgame, man, he was so close to playing. He'll practice Wednesday. And then we'll go from there. Today, he shows up on a knee scooter. And it's not just his ankle, it's his heel too. What? Where did the heel injury come from? Oh, CMC week 1. You know what? He'll play week 1. It will take it right up to he'll be a game time decision, but we're leaning towards him playing. Here we go. 11 weeks later, he finally gets on the field, and it was a calf injury that turned into bilateral tendonitis in his Achilles, both Achilles. Like, come on, man. What is going on around here? So, they say that the MRI doesn't show anything, but who knows, man? He might have had his arm amputated. We don't know.
Yeah. It's I've noticed that. I want to ask you about the 49ers. We're going to start in the 49ers injuries here now that we're on it. Mm-hmm. You have the Fred Warner news, one of my favorite non-Bills players, as you've mentioned, Josh Allen. But I love Fred Warner. I mean, just what a player. I mean, that seems like a weird, obviously he's played through it, and his numbers and analytics when I pulled him look still pretty good. Is he the same Fred Warner? And it just seems so weird with the situations injury wise across San Francisco. It seems starting from, you mentioned it, from Christian McCaffrey all the way to Trent Williams and in between, the Bills are the opposite, where Sean McDermott will be I don't know. I don't think he's going to play. It doesn't look like he's going to play. He will come out and tell you, mostly, we don't think he's going to go. Occasionally there's a little bit of a, we'll see. But you very much know, for Sean McDermott, he's the other way. So we're not used to that. So I guess, talk to us. Is that just how he is with his injury? Always, he's ready, man. He's going to play next week, we swear. And then he gets a setback, or is that truly just weird injuries you've had specifically lately? It seems weird watching that, and from the mindset that we're in, where they're McDermott will go on the radio and just be yeah, no, Kean Coleman's not playing. So I'm not used to nice. Like the he's gonna like he was so close to playing, we swear. So like talk to me. Is that normal? Is that weird this year? I guess
no, it's completely normal. I think D Ford's still week to week. He should be back anytime. I mean, this is what Kyle Shanahan does. He thinks it gives him a competitive advantage if the other team doesn't know how to prepare for it. What I don't know. He's always been this way. I don't understand it, but this is what he does. But yeah, as far as injuries go, I mean, the 49ers have a ton of them, but I was optimistic coming off the Green Bay game that a lot of guys would be back. You got Dre Greenlaw. They opened up his practice window for the first time all year. One thing the 49ers traditionally do is they don't open practice windows usually until a player's like ready to play. Like they don't say, hey, we're going to wait till week 3 to bring them back like you guys may do with Milano or what have you.
You do, yeah.
The 49ers open up a practice window. That guy usually plays the next week. So I was like, well, maybe Greenlaw will be back. I don't know that that's for sure the case, but that was kind of my thought process there. Charvarius Ward, who rejoined the team about a week and a half ago, had some personal things going on. He's back with the team, and I believe he's going to play. He practiced in full today, so he should be back. You've got Bosa, who missed last week. I thought there was a chance he would be back. Kyle Shanahan said that Trent was going to be back. So it was like, all right, Trent, you get Brock. All of a sudden, the 49ers are the healthiest they've been all season. But now it's like, I don't know that Bosa plays. I don't know that Greenlaw plays. I don't know that Trent or Purdy plays. I don't know. I really – and then the way that the 49ers are talking, it's almost as if they think they can lose one more game this year. And they'll just take that this week knowing that they got to travel and the elements and all that. And then they'll really turn it on. They've got a switch that they're ready to turn on and run through the rest of the season, and they'll make the playoffs. Like, all right, go ahead, guys. I don't think that's a great strategy, but seems to be the way that we're headed here.
Gives you another week to rehab. You miss the weather elements. Like you got the Bear. I mean, you do have winnable games. Like I do think that there is a world where maybe it doesn't feel like it right now, but from an outsider's perspective, there's a world where you could rip those off. Looking at like the Bills do every single, like last year, they were similar to the 49ers this year. Like the Bills didn't maybe have quite the injury issues. But they were in a similar boat. They were chilling 5-5. They were chilling 6-6, fired their offensive coordinator. And then Josh Allen just said, yeah, I'm just not going to lose again this year. Very similar. They had a really good at the time, a buzzing Dallas team come in and they just steamrolled them. And then the Bills, didn't lose again. They caught the Dolphins. It's, always the joke that the Dolphins, you can have a 4-game lead on the Bills and the Dolphins will always mess it up. It's like clockwork. Tua just loses at under 40 degrees. It's like a known fact. And then by the time the playoffs come around, if they make it, like they just get blown out. And that's just how it goes. So like, I just kind of feel like that for the 49ers until they're really down and out, maybe lose to the Bills, lose to the Bears or something. All right. But I always will feel like they can rail off. That could be true, especially if all those guys, maybe it's not this week with the travel. Is the Bears game home?
Bears game's at home, yeah, and then they have a Thursday night game against the Rams.
Those are winnable games, though. I mean, based on the roster and how you're feeling. So there may be some organizational credence to that, but before that, you have a Bills game where the team's going to be traveling out and getting used to the AFC weather elements. Is that so Josh Allen himself will tell you he wanted a dome. So Josh Allen will say, I wanted a dome. Like my numbers are ridiculous. He's 7-0 in a dome. We don't play in a dome if you can't tell that often. He's like, we don't play in domes that often with our schedule. But he's 7-0 and his numbers are ridiculous. He doesn't love it either. Like it's not his preferred way to play. You would think about seeing him run through the snow like you see him against the Chiefs. That weather was nice that day, but it's not his favorite either. Especially a guy that carries the ball a lot, who wants to make a play. You will see some lapses from Josh Allen at times. In the cold, he's really good. So he's really good in the cold. He'll run you over. In the elements, it's a challenge for him at times in those elements, especially rain. So is that something that the 49ers are used to seeing in their schedule? Like, do they see 6 to 12 inches a lot? Will Shanahan have a game plan for that? I mean, I know you guys, I'm a Mason guy. I know that like there's all that talks about him wanting to only play one running back and the guy, and then he gets all the carries and a one back system. Even the Bills rotate running backs, by the way. They'll go to Ray Davis or Ty Johnson frequently. Like Ty Johnson outsnapped James Cook last week. So talk to me. Is that normal? Like is CMC going to be able to play through that? Like, I guess, like, what do you see?
I mean, I think CMC will probably be okay, but he's just probably 70% of what he was last year. I mean, last year he was the offensive player of the year. He's nowhere near that right now. He's lost a lot of explosiveness. And, you know, whether he was injured or not, just coming back from not playing that long and coming into a middle of a season where everybody's body is hardened to being tackled and all these other things, it's going to take a while to get up to speed. And then you add in the fact that he was rehabbing 2 injuries, that just adds on top of it. So it's no wonder that he is kind of slowly getting back up to being himself. Now, the issue is why isn't Mason playing? That doesn't make any sense at all. He's an absolute wrecking ball. And I feel like if the elements get crazy, getting him 10 to 15 carries would be a must. But it's Kyle Shanahan, so I don't know that he's going to do that. I understand that Josh says, hey, I would love to play in a dome. Of course he would. You think Ben Roethlisberger? I mean, imagine just taking Ben Roethlisberger and putting him on the Saints instead of Drew Brees. What kind of numbers he would have put up. But what Josh Allen brings with his size, his arm, his hand size, everything, his ability to run, it's an absolute weapon. A lot of quarterbacks, they just physically cannot cut through the weather the way that Josh Allen can. Of course, he's going to make mistakes. The ball gets slick on everybody. Nobody can play in the elements at a perfect level, but he doesn't have to. 30-mile-an-hour winds and snow, his arm's still going to carry. That's not going to be the case for somebody like Brock Purdy if he were to play. And not that I know that he's going to, but if Brock were to play, he's already got an arm that's not the best. Now it might be compromised. He struggles in the rain. I mean, that's a clear advantage Buffalo. So, yeah, Josh, you can say that, but you got to also understand that you're one of maybe 5 quarterbacks in this league that can legitimately throw a football and do it well in these elements.
Yeah, you see him all the time in the playoffs. The Bills have played some 0 to negative temperature, dangerous games where everybody's hitting the turf and getting hurt. And Josh just continues to run through people. It's if he's tuned in, it's an absolute weapon. Like we've seen the great debate of a couple of years ago where they lost to the Patriots and Mac Jones, and it was like a situation to where they just read. I think there was the historic game where they threw once. That the Patriots threw once or twice.
Yeah.
Then Josh Allen's out there literally trying to throw a 60-yard. We were talking about 60-mile-an-hour winds. Like the goalposts were like they were like this. It was wild. Like, I mean, it was insanity. But Josh Allen, by the end of the game, he was dropping 40-yard passes downfield. And by the fourth quarter, he adjusted to it, and the Bills almost came back and won because the Patriots were literally running power, power left, power right duo. They were just running the most basic football you've ever seen in your life. And the Bills were running their full offense. So that was like one of the biggest factors where you're right. But it will also get them greedy to a fact where they're like, they need to adjust somewhat. And that was a game where they really didn't at all. They've since learned, that was many years ago now. And the Bills, have destroyed teams like the Steelers in the elements. It's just because the quarterback advantage, even against a good defense. But if you look through like the roster, so like the 49ers offensive line, I want to ask you about that. I've seen some good results in pass block win rates. I like your rookie a lot. I mean, he got banged up himself. He looked like he was a limited participant. And then we don't know about, if Trent's going to play or not. How has it been like that? We were just talking about that. That could be another factor in the decision if some of those guys are missing. Like now you got another situation to where now Brock has to consider weather, arm, travel, and offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Pooney's going to play this week.
Okay.
We'll see. We'll see about Trent. I mean, I still think there's an outside chance that Trent plays. I know he showed up on a knee scooter, but having a couple weeks off, I think if Purdy plays, he probably plays. If Purdy doesn't play, then he'll probably sit it out. I mean, I think that it's that simple. But looking at the offensive line, it's funny because we've complained about the offensive line for a long time, and the 49ers don't put a lot of assets into the offensive line. they've said themselves like, hey, if we feel like there's a good player that's going to touch the football available, we're going to choose that over offensive line. It's just their philosophy. That being said, they have literally the worst starting center in the NFL by a mile. I think like out of 42 ranked centers in PFF, he's 42nd.
I've seen some film. Was it the one where he got knocked
awful.
over?
He gets not. That's every game. What game?
Yeah.
That's literally every single game. He ends up on his butt at least twice. That's every game that he's ever played. So yeah, I mean, there is some weak spots on the offensive line, but as much as we complained about it, Dominic Pooney has kind of anchored this thing enough to where you look at the advanced analytics, whether you go to PFF, NFL.com, ESPN.com, the 49ers as a pass blocking unit is actually a top 10, maybe closer to top 5 pass blocking unit, which is crazy. Oddly enough, they're not great in run blocking this year, but they've done a good job, and film backs that up. You watch them, they protect Brock Purdy pretty well. I think it was the Vikings game. I think they had 6 sacks. And of course, that was the second game of the season. Everybody's like, oh, this offensive line, here we go again. Well, when you go back and watch it, I thought all 6 sacks were on Brock Purdy personally. I thought he held onto the ball too long. He was double clutching, passing up receivers, leaving clean pockets. And PFF almost agreed with me. I think they said 4 out of the 6 were on Brock. But the offensive line's done a pretty good job this year. Yeah, obviously, if Trent Williams is out, that completely changes things. And if Pooney's out, that changes things. But I'm not so worried about the offensive line holding up. But if Trent doesn't play, everything's out the window. They do need to invest, though, in the trenches more. And here's what's interesting. Kyle Shanahan, 3 years ago, I'll never forget this quote, said, the center position is the heartbeat of my offense. And then he's proceeded to play Jake Brendel year after year after year. That doesn't make any sense to me. But he said that, and I believe him. I was hoping they would draft Bo Limmer. He was available. They took Jarrett Kingston, who didn't even make this roster, at guard out of USC. Bo Limmer was right there, and he's been pretty good. So,
yeah. The Bills really like their depth there with they took Van Pran Granger,
like
the guy that they've liked. He's earned a role. He's now the backup center. The Bills will invest now. So they were like the 49ers where they were similar, where they're not necessarily with weapons. They were the defense. Like if there's a, Von Miller, if there's somebody available, we're taking them. And like there's definitely been some big hits. There's been some misses. The Bills trading for Rasul Douglas, for instance, like they will feel interested in adding to that defense in any moment. However, their offensive line was an issue for many years. It's finally top 5 in a lot of metrics. The Bills got it right drafting Spencer Brown. He had some critics, but he's been very good. He's been very good lately. We were very nervous going into the Chiefs game with him out, missing his first game in a long time. Ryan Vandemark, a guy that they designated as an undrafted free agent, played really well for the Bills, and they were lucky to have him. They drafted Grable, a guy that's developed, who won the swing tackle job. Van Pran Granger's won the backup center job. And they put a lot of money into Connor McGovern, the other Connor McGovern, the spot starter from the Cowboys. Came over, played good guard, and then transitioned to the center. He's been better than Mitch Morse. So the Bills, they said, you know what? Mitch had some limitation, really good in pass protection, really good line calls, struggled mightily in the run. And they replaced him. They didn't have any problem cutting him and just said, we're moving McGovern over. Aaron Cromer's been a revelation for the Bills. Ian Dawkins is playing his best football. David Edwards is his hand-chosen left guard from the Rams. And the Bills they usually have the same unit for years, second year in a row with mostly the same unit. And they're going to continue that into the third year. So that definitely matters. But Aaron Cromer's been a big advantage for the Bills. It's really helped Josh Allen a whole lot more than weapons so far this season. In our opinion, the offensive line's been good. The Bills don't allow sacks. That's partially Josh. But the offensive line has been good. I think Computer Cowboy just gave the Bills the 5th best, and I saw the 49ers as 10th. So they've played solid offensive line football per 3 different metrics. So that's good enough to be a competitor. So I continue to see the record, and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But the Bills are in a similar boat last year, like we've said, where some of the things didn't match up. So that's really where I'll hold out some hope for the 49ers for you, to where I'm like, there could be some progression, not regression, based on if they go for it and the players play. Because I could see that, and I think your division's there. If your division was far away, I would agree that maybe you shut it down. But it's there. And the 49ers are good enough to get hot in the playoffs. They've done it. So even if they're the 4 seed, even, like I just think that they're good enough.
The thing is that it's technically there. Yeah. But like I said, if they lose this week, and they are going to lose this week, Seattle beats the Jets. That's 2 games. That's a 2-game lead with 5 left. And the 49ers have the Bears, they have the Rams. They go to Miami. Not that I think Miami's the best team, but in Miami it makes it harder.
They are good there.
They're good there. And then they got to play Detroit, and then they finish with the Cardinals. So somehow, some way, you have to win 2 more games than Seattle over 5 with that schedule. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw that DVOA gave the 49ers a 5th hardest schedule, probably factoring the Bills, though.
Yeah.
So that will be a challenge. But I mean, I believe in your team. But I mean, talking about Shanahan, what's the feeling right now within San Francisco on Shanahan? I've listened to some stuff. Reminds me a little bit of McDermott in ways. Like they're different people, but like the talk. What's happening with him right now? Is it like a really negative feeling? Like he just took you to the Super Bowl. He's really great offensively, but does seem to have some of these comments and not adapting to, like, it seems to have an ego. I guess talk to me, like, what's going on, like with the fan and your reaction to him right now.
Yeah. I mean, Shanahan's done a good job. I mean, he has. This is year number 8. He's been to 4 NFC championships, 2 Super Bowls. Yes, they haven't got over the hump, but Shanahan's done a really good job. And here's the interesting thing about Shanahan. A lot of people talk about him like he's an offensive coordinator, and they gauge him off that. If the offense is doing great, then he's doing his job. And if the offense is struggling, it's fire Kyle. Kyle Shanahan's the head coach of this team, which means now when things aren't going well, you got to hold him accountable for everything that's not going well. He's the one that hired the defensive coordinator. He's the one that hired the special teams coordinator. Things aren't going great over on those sides of the ball. The roster construction over the last couple of years has been a little bit wonky. But before that, I don't think he got enough credit for the roster construction. I don't think he got enough credit for the coaches that he hired. So this does go both ways. Kyle Shanahan, to me, is interesting because a lot of people are saying fire Kyle. I think he should certainly be on the hot seat if they don't make the playoffs this year. And then if they don't win a playoff game next year, I would say, yeah, it's, you know what, year number 9. I think it's as good as it was going to get. It's time to move on. But I do think that he should get one more chance. That being said, though, I understand why a lot of people do want to get rid of Kyle. And it's ultimately because he doesn't bring the fans into the 49er organization. When Jim Harbaugh was the coach, he had the who's got it better than us. And it's super corny, right? But it actually plays really well with the fan base. And he was very open. He understood after about a year of being with the 49ers that when he was talking to the media, he was really talking to the fans. And he played it up. He knew that. And so he took those opportunities to bring the fan base in. Kyle Shanahan's the exact opposite of that. He doesn't care at all. They've got something hanging over their locker room that's basically like protect the team. Nothing gets out. Almost like the fans and media and everybody's our enemy. It's just, we got ourselves and that's it type of mentality. And when he's in front of the media and questions are asked that we would all love to have answers to, he's extremely smug. He's arrogant. He talks down to them. And it's like, yeah, you're looking at it as you're talking down to that one person. But the reality is you're talking down to the fan base when you do that. So there's a lot of people that are jaded by this regime. They're jaded by Kyle, and they don't like him. They frankly don't like him. I don't like Kyle personally, but I can separate my personal dislike for him
in football,
and knowing what is best for the team. And what's best for the team is that he should get another year. But I understand why people are saying, get this guy out of here at every chance they get.
Do players like him?
Players seem to like him. Players do seem to like him. But to me, I don't know. This one's tough for me because I don't do this full time. But one thing that I do in my personal life, I'm in leadership. and I've been around a lot of leadership. I've geeked out on leadership and all the different strategies. And I feel like I know what type of leader Kyle Shanahan is and is not. And to me, from the outside looking in, if I've got this spot on, Kyle is the type of leader that picks favorites. Kyle's the type of leader that when he has an issue with one person, he addresses it as a team problem. Kyle gets a lot of these guys paid, and they love him for that. But I don't know if Kyle, as a leader, just galvanizes the troops, and that's why they love him. I think that some of these guys are friends with him, and so when they speak about him, they talk about him as if he's their friend, not just their coach. And I don't know that that's the best approach as an actual leader.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's some correlation with Sean McDermott, right? And Bills fans, like at least right now, we're kind of like the AFC version in a way of the 49ers in results, in trying to get there and trying to get over the hump. We're always blocked by Mahomes. Like the Bills always beat them 4 years in a row. Like the Bills are just a better team than them in a lot of ways. They get some injuries at the end of the year. The defense doesn't show up, and boom, they're out. And I'm not saying that's the exact path of the 49ers, but there's a lot that goes on McDermott. And, at times he'll make a boneheaded end of game decision. Like his game management is the struggle. His defense comes prepared for the most part, minus of the KC playoff games. His defense is ridiculous. Like in stretches, he does more with less. He's getting guys off the RV. It's impressive in stretches. They turn the ball over. They're fast. They're aggressive. They draft super well. Christian Benford to Terrell Bernard, to many players on their defense that succeed with him. Dorian Williams now, maybe Dorian's going to take a back seat, but he's ready to go if something isn't right with Matt Milano. So like the Bills will draft, develop, and grow Greg Rousseau defensively, but he doesn't get over the hump. Now, players love Sean McDermott. Like they'll play for him. Like there's plenty, one of the famous quotes from Pat Fryermuth of the Steelers was, "If I had to play on another, I would pick Sean McDermott." So that kind of cost or chose Bills fans really players love this guy, but his leadership style is super good. Like he's a super good leader, but he's corny in front of a mic. Like he's dry. Like it's like he's trying to be like Bill Belichick kind of, but doesn't have the successive Bill to kind of act like that. He's not cocky. So it's weird, but people love him. Like I've interviewed him. I've had the chance to interview him during his first year as a coach and when he broke the Bills playoff drought. And like, this is genuinely a good dude. So the Bills have this determination, and the Bills, he's the second winningest coach in pro sports since 2020. So there's some differentiation. Everyone's just like, it's Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen. So there's definitely some battles of if you got Ben Johnson with Josh Allen, what would you get? So there's always that question of did the Bills let him go because they can't beat the Chiefs? But then what happens to the Bills defense? A lot of times Josh Allen can be carried by his defense when he's through one of his boneheaded stretches. So that's what's the biggest determination. And I mean, I saw you with Z-Bot, you've done some stuff with Bills content creation. So you kind of hear it. And Z-Bot may look at it differently than I do. But from an outsider's perspective, what is your opinion on just the Bills in general, Josh Allen aside, and Sean McDermott? To me, he wins games. At the end of the day, he's getting them a lottery ticket and is generally the 2 seed. And he's getting them a chance to host a lot of home playoff games.
Well, I thought when they were losing last year, I said if they don't make the playoffs, they do got to move on from McDermott. That's where I was at. Yeah. I'm like, you're wasting Josh Allen's prime right now. You cannot do this. You can't let this guy just come in and waste it. But watching how they rallied when they got rid of Dorsey, and there was a lot of talk about what the future of McDermott was going to be. This team rallied tough around him. They fought for him through the media. Every time they were asked about him, it was like, nope, that's our guy. We need to go win for him. They knew what was on the line, and they did. Damn it, man. They won for him. They went and won. They got into the playoffs. They did what they had to do. And that pretty much told me all I needed to know is that, yeah, you should probably keep this guy around. If they're going to rally that tough around their coach, where they're going to go tough to win the division and make the playoffs, that's somebody that you got to keep around. And really, I think it all comes down to what does Josh want? And if Josh is championing for anybody, you got to listen. You got to listen. I understand, like, he's not the owner, he's not the GM, but Josh has to be happy. And Josh isn't the type to ruffle feathers. That's not his personality. But whatever it is that he wants, you really got to take seriously. And it seems like he wants McDermott. So I would keep McDermott around. And I do think when you look at Buffalo, it always seems to be the same exact thing with the Bills. The reason they lose in the playoffs, in my opinion, is 3 of their top 5 defensive players are always out at the end of the season. Every single season. It never fails. And, whether that's Tre'Davious White through his things, your safeties, Milano, it doesn't matter, Von Miller, whoever. Like, whatever the top 5 defensive players are on the Buffalo Bills, 3 of them are going to miss the biggest game of the year. And it happens every single year. And then Josh Allen has to go out and do Josh Allen things and carry this team, lead them in rushing, lead them in passing. Hell, he might as well throw to himself and lead them in receiving. And he does all of those things, but it's never enough because they don't have the defense. They don't have the run game to rely on. And it's the same thing year after year. This year, I do think it's going to be different. Not that they're not going to have injuries, but Buffalo is the deepest that they have been ever, I think. They've gotten younger. They've added more depth because of these injuries. Guys are forced to play, and so they're used to playing. They're comfortable playing. There's not a big drop-off. And they can run the football. Like, they can run the football with multiple guys, and they have different styles, all of them. So it's like, hey, listen, Cook's not working, bring in the next guy. If he's not working, bring in they have multiple guys that can run the rock. And Josh Allen's looking at a scenario where it's, I don't know the exact number, but I can't imagine it's been more than maybe 2 games this year he's led them in rushing yards. Like, that's not normal. Josh is normally leading them. You look at the end of the season and it's
rushing
like
touchdowns too.
He's the second leading rusher, but he's only 70 yards behind the leading running back. It's like, that's not that you can't win that way,
because
this year
has
is
been more efficient in the red zone. So the Bills have been
Yeah.
really efficient in the red zone. James Cook has a ton of touchdowns.
Yep.
He's been really efficient for the Bills. You're right. The Bills got younger. It was a big question mark. Everyone said the window closed. They traded Stephon Diggs for a second. The window closed.
It was the best thing that could happen.
They got super young with Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman. So Josh, what did Josh want? The big story here was Josh texted Brandon Beane saying he wanted Keon Coleman. We go back and forth. Was that really the receiver he wanted? But he claims that it is. He claims that he texted him at the combine. He texted him again come draft night. Like, we're getting Keon, right? Like, this is where the range we're in. And he shows it. Like, he will put him in big man situations against good corners. He's going to throw the ball to him. And Keon has been successful prior to the cheap shot Jordan Poyer took on him, which is surprising. But Jordan was trying to make a play and just recklessly went in right in his wrists. And his head, neck, and wrists were here. And we do anticipate him playing, but you're right. So the Bills will run into a ton of injury situations in the playoffs. Every single year, we pulled a guy off his RV who was on our practice squad in AJ Klein to play against Patrick Mahomes. That combo doesn't work. Could work against the Steelers. It does not work, even with the best scheme in the world. And then you have Dane Jackson on the other side because Christian Benford, who has top 7 metrics at corner, he's out. Like, he gets hurt in the last game of the year with Gabe Davis, who say what you want about Gabe Davis, went on, got paid, but Josh loved him. You're just missing too many players. And then, you had the Daquan Jones injury, who was a huge piece of the Bills interior. Like, he's so underrated. If anyone ever talks about Daquan Jones, he's humongous for the Buffalo Bills roster. And you are missing Matt Milano, as you've already spoke about. And it just, the linebacking core was just completely toast. Their safeties were old, and you see what you saw. And the Bills still competed and still lost on a missed field goal. That's the still kicker of that game specifically, where they competed a missed field goal and an easy Steph Diggs drop 80 yards down the field when Josh threw a super dime. So it's 70 air yards. So it's just, those are the things that will happen. And can you blame Sean McDermott for the personnel and for that drop? No. So that's really where it becomes, they did less with more. He had a hit piece wrote about him last year by an editor here. And the team rallied. They didn't agree with it. They rallied. So that was what was really interesting. And then into this year where he's coached some of his best football. so far this season. So look, the 49ers are going to play a healthy Bills roster for once. They're obviously surging. The Bills are very much hoping to clinch their AFC East. If that was clinched and they were just kind of jockeying for 2 seed, 3 seed, I would say the 49ers could get them. Like they could get them. There's not a ton there. The Bills will need to think about it if the 1 seed gets out of hand. If they're really there, they're going to compete to the end. But if they get a couple games out, those are going to have to consider resting players. Like, I mean, they need to be healthy. That's more important than the continuity, at least for a roster that has been together. But you're right. The Bills got younger. They're running James Cook. They're running Ray Davis, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, just guys that are now starting to develop underneath this. And then their offensive line is fairly young and youthful for the most part. Like they're running an offense and a defense that is pretty young. Matt Milano is going to up the age a little bit, taking Dorian Williams, second-year player, off the field. But Terrell Bernard's the leader of this defense, only 3 years in. Christian Benford's a stud on the defense. Even the DeMar Hamlin comeback story, still on his rookie contract, of being a role player, being a bad special teamer, in my opinion, to this year being a safety too. So it's been an interesting development from him to where he's kept Cole Bishop, a guy they really like, off the field. So it's been kind of an interesting story where Sean McDermott is developing his corner. And then they have, Taron Johnson in the slot, a guy they absolutely will never take off the field. So it's been a good development, but let's talk about the game real quick. What do you see happening this weekend? What's your final reaction? What are you saying is going to go down? Where are you at personally with how this specific matchup goes down for the 49ers?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that everybody would be healthy for the 49ers, because a lot of 49er fans think that, this is like the 2020 season, and it's just a down year with injuries, and if they were healthy, things would be different, and I completely disagree. And so I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for everybody to be healthy and for them to get mopped in front of everybody, because that's what's going to happen. And then everybody will see that they need to make changes. And maybe that'll be like the truth serum for this organization internally as well, that they need to make changes. I hope they're not looking at it saying, man, it was just some bad luck this year. It's so much more than that. They need to make some wholesale changes and retool this team quickly before it's too late. So, I don't know who's going to play. This makes it really tough as far as like a score prediction, but Josh Allen is going to own whoever is on the field for the San Francisco 49ers. He just is. He's too much. And the reason Trey Lance was drafted by the San Francisco 49ers is because of Josh Allen. The 49ers in that COVID year played against the Bills. And Josh Allen went dumb in that game. And you had Shanahan come out afterwards like, well, I really like Josh Allen, and I would have drafted him if he would have been there. And, of course, everybody loves Josh Allen now. But I was ready to draft him, and they just took him. So, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden that offseason, they're trading up to number 3, and they go get their big arm, physical quarterback. And it's like, well, clearly there's some influence there from playing Josh Allen, watching Josh Allen, liking Josh Allen. You tried to go get your own. Now, it didn't work out, of course, but Josh Allen is somebody that is respected by Kyle Shanahan, and they struggle with any quarterback that can get mobile. Now, Josh does this thing from time to time where he just refuses to run, it seems like, which I get it. Like,
it's a this year thing specifically.
Yeah. And I think, I get it. He's trying to protect himself and be ready for the playoffs. He had the broken hand or wrist or whatever he was dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. I do understand it. But if he decides to get mobile at all, it's an absolute wrap. I don't see the Bills scoring less than 30. I don't see the 49ers in the elements scoring more than 17. And I just think that the Bills are going to win this game pretty easily in prime time. And, I almost said death of the dynasty, but unfortunately the 49ers don't have a dynasty. They didn't actually win a Super Bowl. But the death of this team as we know it, the funeral is going to be Sunday night. And hopefully they smarten up, they realize that, and then they can compete, again in another 2 years. But right now they've got a lot of issues, and they're not going to get fixed in 1 week heading into Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, 5 straight games of 30 points. You mentioned it. Josh Allen's starting to run again now that the hand's feeling better. He did against the Chiefs when it mattered, like including, game clinching 27-yard touchdown run on 4th down. So you are starting to see that he's now been healthy. And if the weather elements come, you probably will see him run more in this game than we have in the past. Last week, we started to see him do what he was doing. Like most Bills fans agree, like we want to see him run the ball. If it's super cold though, like it's going to be a challenge. We don't want him to get hurt on the turf, but he's generally the one dueling out the punishments. That's what's cool about Josh Allen over guy maybe a little smaller that likes to run, or if Baker Mayfield's running around or whatever it may be, Kyler Murray, what have you. Even I mean, Lamar's different. He's a different beast too. But when Josh is running around, he delivers. People make business decisions, especially DBs and safeties on the field. Like you will see them all the time go low. He'll jump you. You'll see all the time them just try to hit him in the body. He'll just roll over you. It's a challenge. So if they do roll out that running game plan, which they could, but they got to remember they need to stay healthy, specifically to Josh Allen, to even have a chance at this thing. And we'll see how many business decisions the Bills make, because at the end of the day, even winning by 3, winning by 30, it doesn't really matter to their long season success. They come out with a field goal win. They're fine with it. Like on a last minute field goal, like coming out healthy is now what they're thinking.
I will say this though, for the Buffalo Bills and just their psyche going into this final stretch in the season, you think about it, you played the defending Super Bowl champions and you beat them. You go into the bye week and then you come out of the bye week playing the team that was also in the Super Bowl. And if you can beat them and beat both of them by more than a score, you got to be feeling really, really good about yourself.
Yeah, that's very fair. And the thing is, they will have some extra motivation that they'll have this week, but they won't, maybe not against the Rams on the road in LA next week, which is they can clinch the AFC East on Sunday Night Football on December 1st, put another nail in the Dolphins, which they love to do. And that is something to play for. In a couple of weeks when they play the Jets, though, like maybe there's not a whole lot there. The Patriots is another good example of a team that can catch us when we're just kind of going through the motions. But you're right. Like there's a lot of psyche here that Bills still consider the 49ers a Super Bowl contender until they're not. Until they do have they're eliminated across their record. Bills will probably still consider them a top 3 NFC team. And a lot of Bills fans will still look at their roster and say, we don't know who's going to play. I mean, even inside the building, you guys probably don't know. But the roster is still really good. They could turn it on at any time. The EPA is good. If you look at PFF, if you look at SIS, doesn't really matter. There's still some analytics, and then the weather could happen, and then maybe you got a Josh fumble game. Like there's still things there that the roster is good enough. And maybe San Fran goes on a run themselves. This is the game that does it. So you're still going to have plenty of Bills fans thinking that way of a good roster. We'll see what these weather elements bring. It's going to be a challenge. Like people can't even get to the game, but they snowmobile there. It's wild. Like half of Buffalo. So I don't know if you've heard this before, but half of Buffalo. So the southern half of Buffalo, right off of Lake Erie, gets absolutely pounded by snow. The northern half, so the city, and then the north suburbs get 0, like literally no snow, inch or less. Cold, but no snow. You can look, like if you're standing on the city line, you can look at Orchard Park where they're playing, and you can't, it'll be a wall of snow. You can see it. But where you're standing is bone dry. So a lot of times people stay downtown and they'll say like, there's no snow, like this isn't bad. And then it's a joke. They drive like literally 5 miles south, and it's like you don't know where you are anymore. Like is this the same place? Like is there light? Is there sunlight? Like it's wild. So like for a player to see that, players talk about it all the time. Like we had players that didn't even have snow brushes. So for a player to see that, it is eye-opening from where they're usually staying in a nice hotel or a decent hotel. Then they drive into the snow and they're like, I'm playing in that. Like that field's going to be ready. It is a shock for players who don't see this much. So I'm interested to see what the 49ers, how they look at it. I think it was George Kittle on the show Receiver mentioned not liking to play under 50 degrees.
I don't think most players
don't, but he made a point. I forget the reference he made, like specifically what he was referring to, but he mentioned like, we just like we don't win very often underneath these temperatures. So
the 49ers have never played well in the elements. They haven't, and they haven't faced it a lot. But if they get rain and stuff, it's not a recipe.
how about
for
in
them.
Green Bay? Like is that?
Yeah, but it's not snowing or anything. It's cold, but they were fine. The cold has never been an issue. They'll play fine in the cold, but if you add some moisture to it, they don't play very well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where else, because you wouldn't play Cleveland a lot. You wouldn't play.
No, but then they did play Cleveland last year, and it was cold and it was raining, and it was an awful. They played terrible.
That stadium can be wild itself. That's a totally different element.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate you coming on. Any final things you can give us to our listeners, where to find you, what you're working on, what your hope is for the off season, and are you thinking that this rebuild happens? Do you still think there's a run? I guess wrap it up for us. What do you think?
Yeah, man, I think 49er fans were in for maybe a couple down years, but if they do this right, after next year they could start potentially contending again. And I would say just enjoy this ride as Buffalo Bills fans. You guys are very lucky to not have to worry about who your quarterback's going to be every year. Don't take that for granted. Not that you will. I think people that have been Buffalo Bills fans know that you've gone through the JP Lossmans and
17-year drought.
The Nathan Petermans and whatever. But Josh Allen is a gem. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's elite, and as long as you've got him, you're always going to be competitive. So don't take it for granted. And I always root for fan bases as well. When a fan base has been down for a long time, I root for that team to win once the 49ers are out of it. So, whether it's the Lions or the Bills, Browns, whoever, if they got a chance to finally get over the hump, I think that's a cool thing to see. So I hope for the Buffalo Bills that you guys go into the postseason healthy and we see what's what. I think that they can win a lot of these. But as far as 49ers go, we'll see, man. We'll absolutely see. But if you do want to check me out, Last Second Sports, you can catch me on YouTube. Not that you necessarily want to hear a lot of 49er talk, but maybe you want to just dabble, whatever. Yeah.
They're playing, so we don't play a lot. So I'll definitely tune into a bunch of stuff. Grant's great too. So I like to listen to it. And he's down, man. He's down on your team, right? What's going on with Grant?
Well, he's not a fan. He's truly a journalist, and he takes his job very seriously, and he's a jokester. But it's funny because when the 49ers are winning, everybody hates Grant. But when they're losing, Grant's like a necessary evil that the fan base needs. Yeah, they're like, we need the therapy. All right, Grant will give it to us real. So
yeah, I saw his rant about the losing seasons. What is Shanahan 4 now? Is that right? 4.
If they don't have a winning season this year, it'll be his 4th. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah.
From an outside.
So half they're either going to the NFC Championship or they're having a losing season. That's
that's the one difference with McDermott. He makes the playoffs every year, including when he had Tyrod Taylor. So it is a little different. Ultimately he gets the team in the dance, and Josh Allen needs to have his moment, and maybe you'll get one of those. I think there's a 17% chance of Bills Lions Super Bowl. So you may see
that'd be a hell of a Super Bowl.
One of these teams get off the mend if we can finally get through Mahomes. The roster is there though, as we saw last week, and it's only getting healthier. And it starts with the 49ers.
Well, and you have a rare situation here. Like Lamar, for as great as Lamar is, he folds in the playoffs. He folds against the Chiefs. Josh Allen's the opposite, man. Not only does he play well against the Chiefs in the regular season, but he goes to a whole new level in the playoffs. I mean, I think arguably, if you just go number for number, he's outplayed Mahomes in those games. He can't do it alone. And so looking at Josh, you're going to get the best Josh Allen against the Kansas City Chiefs. It's can the rest of the team match him? And if they can come anywhere close, I think they can beat the Chiefs. It's not like Josh is going to fold.
Yep. So you're going to see a motivated Bills team with the AFC East on the line. Well, do you think that the Packers beat the Dolphins tomorrow night?
Listen, the Dolphins don't play well in cold. I get all that, but Green Bay is very beatable right now, and they're missing some good player. They're missing their middle linebacker. They're missing their best corner. They're missing one of their wide receivers. They're missing some big time players. I got a weird feeling that Miami's going to pull this one off. I do.
Okay. All right. Yeah. There's some thought. They're playing really good football. Tua's playing great. I still think he's winless under 50 degrees.
Listen, Tua's not a very good quarter. I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says.
He's got a good match and a head coach. When they're not together, both of them stink. But when they're together, it does work a little bit. But the Bills shut him. We're never concerned with the Dolphins. Like
he just doesn't show me anything, man. Yeah. He doesn't show me anything when it matters most. Like I can't take that guy seriously.
He's a bad team merchant. That is what Tua is, and he's good against bad team, really good. But he is a bad team merchant. Just historically, he's bad in cold weather. He's bad in December. He's bad in the playoffs. Like it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't add up for him. But thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. We really thank you. I know you've been on like 40 shows. You've been with Z-Bot. You've been on your roundtable. You're doing your media. A lot of Bills podcasts. We take it seriously. So the Built in Buffalo Network really thanks you for popping on. And good luck with all content. We'll keep in touch. We'll see what happens with this injury report because I seriously can't even do matchups because I have no idea who's playing on the 40. I have no idea. So
for sure. You guys have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for having me on, and we'll keep in touch, Kevin.
Thanks for Last Second Sports, man. We appreciate you popping on.
Bye, guys.
See you later. What a great experience, Pat. Really some really good overall 49ers takes. Gave us some good context in what's going on there. What are you thinking, man? What are your opinions from what you heard from Jessie?
Well, it seems like some 49er fans are down on their team. Me personally, I still think, they can go on a run starting next week against when they play teams like the Bears, the Rams, the Lions, the Cardinals. So I think they can go on a run because I still look at that team as a Super Bowl contending team. So I don't think their season's over. And if they can get healthy come for wildcard weekend, they can go on a run. They can challenge a team like Detroit. They can challenge a team like Philadelphia.
I think that their roster is just better for the NFC playoffs with them in it over, like no offense to teams like some of those teams that may
right.
Like I think that their roster is better when healthy. Like the Packers game, you can take nothing from them with who played. This week we'll see who plays, but going over to Buffalo, you can't take a ton out of that even if they're unable to be successful here.
Right.
I still think they have a run in them, and with that division right there, I know we can't really find a lot of games in those last 5 to earn 2. But it's still the freaking Seahawks. They're not good. The Bills went there and rolled them. Like it's still the Cardinals. Like they have some good players, but their overall roster is not great. The Rams, they can't play defense at all. So ultimately, that 4 seed is still like I know they don't feel it too much, and they would, Pat. If for some reason they either play really good and lose close, or they beat the Bills, like their mindset will change a ton. Especially getting into the Bears game, beating the Bears. But
that's a winnable game next week for them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think their mindset could completely change. I mean, they're playing a hot Bills team on the road in elements. I mean, I still don't we can't really talk to him. We don't know who's playing quarterback for the 49ers.
Right.
So how the heck can I do game matchups? I have no idea if Bosa's playing. I have no idea if their left tackle's playing. I don't know what DBs. I know Lenore's been hurt. I don't know how to do matchups. Keys to the game is we don't know who's even on their roster. This week it could be a variation from everybody to none of them. So it's really hard to focus. Like, look, the elements are there. The Bills are going to run a Josh Allen game plan. They're going to run the ball a ton. They're going to put him outside on the edge and try to make linebackers and cornerbacks make business decisions against him in the cold. We saw it against the Steelers in the playoffs. It's going to be kind of that kind of thing where you got to bring him down. You're going to see, probably a little bit more Ray Davis than you would normally. You're going to see the tight ends if Dalton Kincaid plays, but everybody else should be healthy. And defense, they're going to do nothing more than they're going to attack the football. They're going to make them make mistakes. They're going to try to do it them to throw the ball in the elements. And ultimately we'll see what CMC can bring in this snow game. I do think that there's a path to a good Bills win. But it's just such a good roster. And if all the guys play, that does shrink the margin of error. But the line's going up. Bills are favored by 7 points. That's usually a sign that Vegas doesn't feel like Purdy's going to play. At least if he does, not many other players play. It's probably all linked together. Jessie was right. If Purdy plays, other guys will play. If he doesn't, I can't imagine they're going to push other players in a snow game. It makes too much sense where anyone would be coming back for the Bears game. Poor Bears, but they would have to play probably a lot of these guys at home, that the Packers and the Bills maybe got to avoid. But the Bills are favorite anyways, even with Purdy. I had this as a Bills win, even at their full strength, because it was in Buffalo. I had a Bills win in this specific game. What do you see as keys to the game now, Pat?
Yeah, my keys to victory are be effective on third down, keep the chains moving, and run the ball effectively. And on both sides of the ball, win in the line of scrimmage, because they do still have Christian McCaffrey. I know our guest said earlier that he's only at 70%, but for me, I still look at the 49ers as the 49ers, and that's still Christian McCaffrey. So keep an eye on Christian McCaffrey at all time. Don't let them be two-dimensional. Shut down the run. Force them to throw in the elements.
Agree. The Bills will be used to this as much as like none of these guys are from Buffalo. Now this roster's been together long enough to know how this goes. Like there is some credence that just because it snows, like against Mahomes, like there's no benefit. Like, he's going to be just as ready as you are.
Right.
But for teams that have never really played in it, they don't really see it. The Bills live in it. So even if there's not a snow game, they know what it's like. They know what it's like to practice in it and travel. They know the whole scenario. They know what it's like to have a game moved. Like they know what it's like to be really cold out, like in front of their fans. Like they have all of those, that mindset. So as much as even myself is like, it's not a benefit to put Josh Allen in snow. I still believe, even though any player would say they don't want to play in the snow or play in elements, Josh Allen doesn't like it that much. Like in the playoffs is one thing when he needs to have it, but generally speaking, he doesn't love it. And I still think a tick more because I think he probably feels like it cuts his passing game, where if you have an average quarterback, it will reduce an average quarterback too. But now Josh goes from elite to, just above average thrower. So I don't think he likes that at all. And he tries to compensate for it. His numbers aren't particularly great in elements, but I believe Jesse's right. Like you need to see Josh Allen run the ball. Like this is a Josh Allen run the ball game. You're willing to do it against the 49ers or against the Chiefs. You need to show it more this week. And then you can back off from it. Like you can back off from it in LA next week. You can back off from it against, the Lions is going to be a real pivotal game, but then you play the Jets and the Patriots twice. You don't need to run any of those three division games unless there's for some reason like a play. The one seed may still be there, and that's going to be the challenge if the Bills are still only one game out throughout the rest of the season.
Right.
How can you not chase it?
Kind of have to.
Right. If you're 2 games out with 2 left, you're still weighing the decision. If you're 3 games out with 3 left, based on how this stretch goes, you're weighing the situation. But do you see us going into the 49ers game and with the division on the line? Like he made some good points. He feels like Miami could beat the Packers. We see too much of Miami in elements and against bad team or against good teams, and they don't win. But he's right, unbiasedly. Like there's probably a path to a win for the Dolphins, and that would take some sting out of the stadium. Like now we're going to go on the road to clinch the division against an average Rams offense that can get it done. Their defense stinks. So do you feel like as we go into this 49ers game, what's the most likely record over 49ers, Rams, Lions? Are you still thinking 2-1? Like that's obviously the most obvious, but is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking 2-1. 2-1. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a path to where you're still 2 games behind the Chiefs. Now, 3 games left, 3 division games against bad teams who don't have a ton to play for. Injuries a galore for us. It doesn't matter for them. How do you play those 3 games?
For me, if we do fall 2 games back of the Chiefs for the 1 seed, I'm kind of just playing for the 2 seed and locking that in and resting our guys because we won't have that first round bye. As we saw in the wild card game last year against Pittsburgh, guys like Rasul Douglas and Terrell Bernard went down. So I think eventually we would have to give these guys some rest if we weren't to get the 1 seed. So I would rest some players.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need to take week 18 off unless the 1 seed is at hand. And win in good odds to beat the Patriots and take the 1 seed all out because now you get a bye. Now you get a round off. That's a lot to play for. But those last 2 games where there's not a lot of high probability and all you're doing is going all out to hurt your players, it's such a tough decision. We'll get into that and more in future shows. But Pat, we're going to talk about score predictions now. We're going to talk about what you're thinking, how this is exactly going to go. It's super hard because my prediction is different based on Purdy and Bosa and Williams that it is with Brandon Allen, like in the snow, Brandon Allen on top of it, not even at home, Brandon Allen. So like ultimately this is this is going to be a challenge. We're going to start with you. What do you got? Give us your final takeaways and score prediction.
I do have Buffalo winning this game 21-3. I do think that San Francisco will score a late field goal, kind of like what the Colts did. And I just think that the injuries for the San Francisco 49ers is just too much to overcome. And on top of that, traveling all the way to the East Coast, which is not an easy task in itself. And it's in the weather and the element, it favors Buffalo. And with the way Buffalo's playing right now, and especially at home, it's too much for them to overcome.
So you think they'll kick a field goal to make it a one-score game late?
Yes, or a touchdown. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. It's tough to really – Wednesdays are tough to break down a score prediction and be a little bit easier on Friday or Saturday because, like, these are major players. We're not talking about if Dalton – like, I love Dalton Kincaid, but, like –
right.
Will he change? Like, what is the overall EPA on a game-to-game basis over expectation for Dalton Kincaid? Point? Like, you're talking about like an overall EPA of a point for receiver would be good. But like, you're talking about major players that total EPA from the combination is like 20. So like it's really tough. Like, did you make that prediction with Purdy playing or like what?
It was hard, but yes, it was good. That's with Purdy. Or if even Purdy does not play, maybe I see that as like a 31-17 game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's what Jessie said too. I mean, I'm going to state regardless of like, I think Brandon Allen plays. So I'm making a prediction of Brandon Allen. Not throwing on a Wednesday, like, dude, you're going to travel in the cold and throw? Like, I guess that's a thing. But I'm going to predict that he doesn't. So I'm going to go off of that score prediction. I agree that with Brock Purdy, I think it's a one-score game. Without Brock Purdy, I got the Bills winning. The elements are going to keep some of the field goal tries away. The Bills are going to go for it on fourth downs. They're going to score touchdowns. Right. I got 28 points. I got the Bills scoring 4 touchdowns. I got 28-14. That's a number that jumped out to me because of touchdowns, maybe a limited kicking game. I'm going all touchdowns in this. But that's what's jumped out to me. They cover, and the Bills do win the AFC East on Sunday Night Football. However, that's out of our control. It's out of the Bills' control even, and we root hard for the Green Bay Packers. I know, it is what it is. We don't really need them that bad, but it would still be cool. Like, if they lose, whatever. Like, if Green Bay can't get it done, like, that's bad on you. That's another reason why the 49ers are still alive. Because a 49ers team can't take care of the Dolphins, or a Packers team can't take care of the Dolphins. But they, they did take care of a hurt 49ers team. So they do have the tiebreaker, which will help them, Pat.
Yes, it would.
In a wild card situation. But ultimately, that's what I mean, though. Like, I think it's a middling conference. You got the Lions and Eagles, and then
kind of the rest.
I mean, any one of them can go to the divisional round. Like, literally any other team can make it to the divisional round of the NFC playoffs. Wouldn't be shocked if it's Atlanta, if it's Tampa, if it's Arizona. Like, that's how open it is. Green Bay, Minnesota. That's how open it is to me of Washington could steal a game against one of those teams. Like, I don't think they're going to get it done. They're showing their weakness right now, in my opinion, and I think they're going to lose more down the stretch. So that's a vulnerable team. You could take their wild card spot from them. So I just don't buy that they're out yet. If they come to Buffalo and look terrible, that may change my final input, and then the Bears game will kind of be the final thing. But we'll see how it goes for the 49ers. It's going to be interesting. That we'll have to reevaluate what we're feeling. But Pat, give us your final thoughts on this game as we get into the stretch run. You already said 2-1 in the stretch run, but it's the hardest stretch of the season, I guess. I mean, I would still argue Houston, Baltimore, Miami was harder. At least
that was tough.
A Miami playoff team that's good, at least still at Tua still into, now you're talking Baltimore and Houston there. That's still a pretty tough schedule. But this is a challenging 3-game stretch. The Rams aren't as, I guess, threatening as you would think, but they're still good. 49ers aren't as threatening as they could have been, and the Lions are probably just as threatening as most thought or more. So give us some final takeaways you have going into Thanksgiving, going into what the Bills need to do on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I would definitely say take advantage of this game because we do have a hard game coming up in 2 weeks against the Detroit Lions, which some people are saying is a Super Bowl preview. Me, take it. It's a one game at a time approach, and just keep playing smart football and just don't turn the ball over. Especially on these next 2 games after this week, playing on the road. Don't turn the ball over. Don't put yourself in that type of situation, and just get out healthy. Win by 1 or win by 50 is the same result.
There it
just
is.
win and move on and get healthy.
I agree, but Jesse made a good point of the Bills can beat both the Super Bowl champions or Super Bowl contenders in back-to-back weeks. To win the division, there's a lot on the line for the Bills. I'm still under the opinion of how much will they get up to be in LA to play the Rams. That remains to be seen. As a true before the Lions trap game, definitely exists. But if they need the division, that won't exist. And then if they have the division, then the Lions are definitely going to get up for. But then, like that Jets game is like they're the Jets, so they're probably playing Tyrod by that point.
Right? Yeah, probably.
I mean,
Tyrod Taylor.
I mean, that's not going to be a threat. Like, I mean, New England sucks. Like they're
bad.
So, but hey, the Bills will only be playing for seeding at that point for the most part. Let's take care of the Dolphins now. Let's not even give them hope that they can have some crazy comeback run. And get them taken care of. What Green Bay lost, so I'll root for Green Bay. I don't really care about Green Bay much, but I'm rooting for Green Bay.
Yeah, go Pack, go! I guess.
Yeah. To put them down, and then I can just finally not care about the Dolphins any longer. Would prefer not to see them in the 2-7 game though, even though we own them.
Right.
I still prefer to not see them in a 2-7 matchup.
Yeah, especially now with it being a division opponent. See them 3 times a year. It's hard to win 3 times against one opponent in a year.
I feel better, but I still don't want to see that. Who would you want to play if the Bills do get the 2 seed? Who is your most ideal matchup?
I would say Denver because Sean McDermott is good against rookie quarterbacks.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. It's probably Denver. I'm not threatened by LA at all. So for some reason, Denver passes them somehow, or LA falls to the 7, however that may go. I ultimately now I don't know what's going on with Dobbins. I'm not overly worried about the Chargers. And
he's out a couple of weeks with the MCL sprain.
Is that what it is officially?
Yes.
So we'll see how far they fall. He's a huge part of their offense. The team completely stuck with him off the field. I mean, like Ladd McConkey a whole lot. He's been good. Yeah. But that's not enough. I don't like Quentin Johnston, and that's not enough for me to be. Yeah. And we all know Justin Herbert and how he looks late in games. He's got one fourth quarter win? What was it that he just broke last week? Is it one? It's one win when losing.
When trailing in the fourth quarter or something like that?
Like, it's literally one. And it was against whoever they played last week. Was it the Bengals? Yeah, and they almost blew it.
Yeah, they almost lost that game. Yeah.
They almost went full Chargers. So, ultimately, I don't want to play the Dolphins. Let's play one of those AFC West teams.
Right.
If the Bills had to. But they got a lot of work to do. The Chiefs have a pretty weak schedule, but we're going to be rooting for Houston or the Steelers, which puts the other seeds at vulnerability. Like ideally, the situation is if you can't have the 1, you can waltz your way to the 2. But if the Chiefs hold up and still get the 1 seed, but still lapse against Houston and Pittsburgh, that puts some pressure on the Bills for overall seeding that they'll have to make decisions on against those bad division teams. So, Pat, any final thoughts for this week? Anything you want to see healthy? Obviously, anything else you want to see?
Yeah, just get out of this game healthy and just get out with a win.
Okay. There we have it, guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We really appreciate going live here an hour and 40 minutes. Had a great guest in Jesse. He's doing his great work, so we'll put him in the description. Go check out his stuff. He kills it over there in his 49ers content. To our show sponsors, the Summit Center and Larson-Timko Funeral Home, thank you so much for your patronage. Larson-Timko is offering live streaming, so that's been amazing. So we really appreciate everybody for being on here on Thanksgiving Eve. Lots to do around towns, lots of bars open, lots of fun to be had. And we're going to be enjoying what could be a snow game, which sometimes are cool to watch if the Bills are dominating. It's going to be tough for an away team to come into elements and play good. The only person that can lose the Bills the game is Josh Allen. If he has a Josh Allen game like that, it's the only way the 49ers could win a snow game. But if he plays good like he has been, it's wrap. It's a wrap on the season. And I don't ultimately see how they play Brock Purdy in these conditions. In a sunny Miami weather, maybe at home, I think he would have a good chance. I just don't know a guy that threw one screen pass on a Wednesday, an offensive tackle who's on a scooter. I mean, look, in the playoffs, you could rally. I don't know that flying to Buffalo in the snow is going to be that moment that we see all their weapons, but we'll see. We'll see which ones play. It may be all or nothing. Maybe that Jesse's right about that. So we'll have to track the injury report and more. So it's tough to do exact matchups. But Pat, appreciate you coming on here. We look forward to a future editions, getting a great Rams guest on next week. That's going to be fun to recap not only this game, but get some Rams action in for you next week. But we'll be back here, right here, normal time, right on a Wednesday night. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll chat with everybody next week.